right. Happy Monday. Welcome back. This is your Newsmax Daily for December 16th, 2024, the 351st day of the year, the 51st Monday, with only 2 more to go. And we are 9 days away from Christmas and Hanukkah. This year, Hanukkah begins on Christmas night. There's a Hanukkah reception happening at the White House tonight. More on that coming up a little bit later. I hope you had a terrific and safe weekend, maybe preparing for Christmas or Hanukkah. And I hope your team or teams were in the win column.
We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
President-elect Donald Trump chalking up another win over the weekend as ABC News quietly agreed to pay $15 million towards Trump's presidential library. That's to settle a lawsuit over George Stephanopoulos' inaccurate assertion that Trump had been found civilly liable for raping writer E. Jean Carroll, calling the president-elect a rapist. A statement from ABC said the company will post a note on its website expressing regret over the statement on Stephanopoulos' show and pay $1 million in legal fees to Trump's lawyer as well. Another highlight of the weekend was no doubt President-elect Trump, Vice President-elect Vance, Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth, and several other cabinet nominees attending the annual Army-Navy football game on Saturday, along with Daniel Penny, who was acquitted last week in the New York City subway chokehold death case of Jordan Neely. Penny, who is a U.S. Marine, was invited by fellow Marine J.D. Vance, who said he simply wanted Penny to have some fun and know that his courage was appreciated. It is such an awesome display of patriotism every year, the Army-Navy game. I mean, there are people that don't necessarily care about football or watch football, college football through the year, but always watch the Army-Navy game. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, a Navy veteran, was also at the game. If you are a sports fan, you likely know Dave Portnoy, Barstool Sports, or you heard of Dave Portnoy. He posted something on X from the game that really got my attention. I wanted to share it, but I also want to give credit where credit is due. The post said, "This is the only game where those playing on the field would give their lives for those in the stands." Think about that. So Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, and other Trump appointees are back on Capitol Hill today, continuing to meet with lawmakers. And it is going to be a busy week for those lawmakers in Congress. Being their final week in session, among other things, they must at least pass a short-term spending bill to avoid a government shutdown at the end of the week. Newsmax host Tom Basile spoke with Jason Miller, senior advisor to the Trump-Vance transition team, about the upcoming confirmations.
Some of the president-elect's potential nominations, though, Jason, of course, facing a bit of a tough go on Capitol Hill from the press and even from some Republicans. Here's a small sample of what some of the media have been saying.
Well, America, I hope you like measles.
I don't trust anything that he says because precisely that he'll say anything to be confirmed. When he makes blanket statements like that, it's very clear that he is not qualified. Our women have made our military stronger because our military could not go to war without the women that serve in its ranks.
Yeah, I think she's totally unqualified to be a DNI, and I think her positions put her beyond the outermost fringe of American politics.
I happen to be talking to folks in D.C. They seem to think Pete Hegseth is on an upswing. That his round with the senators is actually done. He's done very well. Is Tulsi Gabbard now the new target by Democrats and the press? And is a lot of that reaction just to the fact that she crossed party lines?
Well, I think the bigger deal here is that Tulsi Gabbard is going to come in and shake up the status quo and the way business is done in Washington. And that's exactly why President Trump picked her. Here's someone who's highly qualified, who's served herself, someone who's been 4 terms in Congress, obviously having served in the military, brings a very unique perspective to this position, also having run for president, because when I see someone like John Bolton attacking Tulsi Gabbard, then that makes me think exactly, you know what, Tulsi is the type of person who we want. So take a look at who actually is attacking Tulsi Gabbard, because it's the Beltway insiders, it's the so-called geniuses. Well, I'm still trying to find the weapons of mass destruction, by the way. They still haven't come up with those. The so-called intelligence experts that have led us into foreign conflict after foreign conflict. I want someone who's going to bring a new perspective to all of this. And I think as Tulsi gets in front of these senators, she'll do just that.
One more question for you. Christopher Wray announcing his retirement, his resignation, even though he knew he was going to probably be fired by the president-elect. Lots of talk about reform at the FBI. We know that Trump has not had he's had a very difficult time with the Bureau between Comey and Wray. Talk to us briefly about Kash Patel and how he's doing as he's making the rounds on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, Kash Patel has absolutely knocked everybody's socks off. This is someone who's eminently qualified. He was the chief of staff at the DOD. He is a deputy director of national intelligence. He's someone who's been a federal prosecutor and a public defender. He has done it all. This is the type of person who I want to go in there and get the politics out of it. You know, we saw that report this week of all these FBI informants who are there on J6, and they're trying to say only 3 were supposed to be there, but then there were another 23 who just happened to be there. You see a lot of this funny business going on. I think people have really lost a lot of the confidence with regard to the FBI and law enforcement. But also, as you look over to the DOJ and what we say in the weaponization of the justice system against President Trump. And that's why I think Pam Bondi in the Attorney General spot is going to be so critical for setting the tone. Let's get politics out of it. Justice should be applied the same to everybody. That's what you're going to see Pam Bondi and Kash Patel do.
Senior advisor to the Trump-Vance transition team, Jason Miller, on America Right Now this weekend with Tom Basile. The weekend ended with President Biden delivering a speech last night at the DNC's holiday party, but since Jason Miller just mentioned the FBI and January 6th, let's go back to Friday night's edition of Chris Plant and the Right Squad.
For years now, the FBI has been telling us all that they had no presence whatsoever on Capitol Hill on January 6th. They weren't even there. They don't even know where the place is. And now a new Justice Department report finds out that that's not exactly true, right, Mercy?
You are so right, Chris. Just brilliant. Well, remember back in 2022 when the FBI director, Christopher Wray, wouldn't say whether or not the FBI had confidential human sources in the Capitol on January 6th.
I have to be very careful about what I can say about when.
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources.
Or what about this past summer when he squirmed again when answering the same question?
I'm never going to be getting into when and where we have or have not used confidential human sources.
The Justice Department's Inspector General just did answer the question, noting that 26 confidential human sources working for the FBI were in fact in Washington that day, including 4 who entered the Capitol and another 13 who entered the restricted area. None of them have been prosecuted. ABC News, however, says this report all but vindicates the FBI.
This refutes, Kira, what we've obviously heard from a lot of people on the far right, including people like Steve Bannon, who have said that this was a Fedsurrection, in their words, a federally, funded and promoted riot where people who were part of the deep state were among that crowd cheering people on. And that is a direct tactic as a result of trying to shift blame, obviously, away from President-elect Donald Trump, who urged his thousands of followers to march to the Capitol that day, Kira.
Lies, 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 ABC News. Actually, he said to do so peacefully and patriotically. Amber, let me start with you. Does this report vindicate the FBI? It doesn't seem so.
No, I think it's really interesting, their language, too. They make very careful to distinguish between confidential human sources or informants versus actual FBI employees, meaning people who were officially on payroll and contracted and working for the FBI. But we don't know if these CHSs were indeed paid for the information that they were given. And we know that they did not face the same consequences for their bad behavior on January 6th that other people who were not affiliated with the FBI were. And we don't know if those individuals were part of actually encouraging the people around them to go into the Capitol on that day. So, no, I actually think it does the opposite of indicate the FBI, not to mention if they were able to have so many informants on the ground on January 6th, why were they not able to properly defend the Capitol preemptively to prevent this from happening in the first place?
Not only defend the Capitol, but then if the FBI was already in there, why not have the necessary resources that, I know President Trump calling for the National Guard to be there.
Mercedes Schlapp and Amber Duke on the Right Squad with Chris Plant. That's weeknights at 10 o'clock Eastern, only on Newsmax. I talked about the mysterious drones in New Jersey quite a bit last week, along with Rob Schmidt, who was covering it pretty much before anyone else in the media was. Now the drones are showing up in several other states, and now it's pretty much the biggest story in the country. But the Biden White House, the FBI, DHS, over the weekend are all still mum on the drones. This is DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas on ABC's This Week yesterday.
We know of no foreign involvement with respect to the sightings in the Northeast, and we are vigilant in investigating this matter, the Department of Homeland Security, with the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the lead. If there is any reason for concern, if we identify any foreign involvement or criminal activity, we will communicate with the American public accordingly.
This guy should have been gone so long ago. It's just words, right? It doesn't mean anything. There's no sincerity at all. The FBI is investigating. That doesn't make anyone feel any better. And if they find out anything, they will communicate it to the American people. That also doesn't make anyone feel any better. At least it doesn't make me feel any better, because nobody believes anything that Mayorkas says anymore. You better start paying attention if you're not already. I am very concerned. I mean, this is a thing. If it turns out to be a false alarm, if it's not anything of any meaning by chance, so be it. But right now, it's very concerning. New Jersey Congressman Jeff Drew, who spoke about the drones over his state last week, really bringing attention to it, spoke with Rita Cosby on Saturday Report.
Congressman, I'm so glad that you've been sounding the alarm because it finally seems like the White House is at least responding somewhat, but they're saying they have no idea. What is your reaction to the fact that in the last 24 hours, John Kirby, who's the spokesperson there for the National Security Council, said he doesn't know, he genuinely doesn't know. It's not like he's hiding anything. That should give Americans a lot of concern, don't you think?
Of course. I mean, the most powerful nation on the face of the earth, supposedly. We don't know what they are. We don't know where they're from. We don't know what they're carrying. We don't know what their mission is. We know nothing at all. And this is not one isolated sighting. It's really important to know that people of good repute, solid individuals who are in law enforcement or in the military or who are retired military, just a host of people have seen these things. And some of it is over just residential areas. Some of it of great concern is actually over highly sensitive areas that we obviously want to make sure are protected. You know, we just heard from PSE&G, Public Service Electric and Gas, and it happens to be in my district in New Jersey, in Salem County. It's where the nuclear plant is. They had 24 large drones encircling the entire area, and for the first time in the history of PSE&G at that nuclear plant, they've had to ask for flight restrictions because nobody can tell them what they are, where they're from, and what they want to do. This is serious stuff.
Yeah, that is very, very serious. You just said over a nuclear plant. We also know just the other day there was a Chinese national that was arrested over a space base over in California. Congressman, you know, we also, by the way, we have staff that live in New Jersey, and today they saw some interesting activity. It looked like there were a lot of black SUVs over there trying to maybe get to the bottom of this, if you will, finally trying to jump on this. And of course, this goes back to the history of the Biden administration. The Chinese spy balloon. Remember, they downplayed that forever. Finally, they let it traverse across the country. Then they finally took it out off the coast of South Carolina. But they seem to be lackadaisical about a lot of these things until it gets so much public attention. How concerned do you think we should be just on their lackluster efforts? You raised the alarm also about Iran possibly playing a role.
This administration is inept. It's unbelievable. I don't have the words to describe it. And it is similar to the balloon. The balloon traverses a wide swath of the country, absorbing information, sending that information to China. We do nothing about it. And then finally, as it's about to exit the country, we take it down. Some of these drones need to be taken down so we can find out what their origin is, what they're carrying on them, what they're about, what their purpose is, who's responsible. And yes, and you're exactly right. I mean, now, again, I sounded the alarm on this. Now information is coming out. You know, John Kirby and the other officials that were speaking on this, you know, are kind of almost making light of the fact that there are large ships that Iran has, that Russia has, that China has. They are a full decade ahead of us, a full decade on drone technology, and they are able to transport drones, they're able to fly off them and come back to them. That's not my imagination. And you see now all over the news today that they're real concerned in Israel because they didn't realize how far they've gone with their technology, and that they've been seen also in Germany. These drones have been seen in Germany as well. There's a real issue here.
Again, New Jersey Representative Jeff Van Drew. Over the weekend, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said this has gone too far and Congress must give states more authority to investigate drones. We get more from Rob Finnerty.
The drones that might not even be drones flying all over U.S. airspace 26 nights in a row now have become a metaphor for Joe Biden. Joe Biden, the man, Joe Biden, the politician, Joe Biden, the leader. No one has any idea how this happened. No one has any idea who's in charge, and no one has any idea what to do. Does that sound like the Biden White House that we've witnessed over the last 4 years? I've always said that God's got a sense of humor. I think he does. Things have happened in my life, good and bad, and I always know it's God trying to tell me something. Joe Biden is 4 years of proof that God's got a sense of humor. And to top it all off, Joe Biden's going to leave the White House just like he came in complete chaos. Could you ever imagine any of this happening under Donald Trump? And even if it did, could you ever imagine knowing so little about something so important? Look, I realize that Joe Biden, with his White House, this has become commonplace. We've all been lied to for so long that Americans are suffering from a hybrid form of Stockholm syndrome, when the oppressed sympathize with their oppressors. It's the same thing right now. We're also used to being lied to that we don't think anything of it when it happens anymore. Take a look.
So I cannot make any kind of predictions or comments about that specifically from here. This is something that DHS is looking at and FBI, so I would have to refer you to them. I don't have anything beyond that. We're tracking this very closely.
We don't see any concern for public safety. We had last night 49 sightings. These are apparently very, as I understand it, very sophisticated. The minute you get eyes on them, they go dark.
We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or a public safety threat or have a foreign nexus.
So right now we are so used to being lied to that it doesn't seem to faze us. But here are the facts right now. Here's what we know on this Friday. For the past 26 nights, including tonight, mysterious drones, not the size of beach balls like you might see flying over a summer barbecue. These drones, in some cases, are the size of Lincoln Navigators. They've been flying at low and high altitudes over parts of New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and now California somehow over neighborhoods, businesses, industrial sites, military bases, airports. And even though we're calling them drones, no one can definitively say whether or not these are actually drones. Right now, they are UFOs. They are very literally unidentified flying objects. In many cases, eyewitnesses are seeing multiple at the same time. And when they're approached in the sky, in many cases, their lights suddenly shut off. How weird is that? So what are they? Well, the answers are actually pretty simple. Door number one, this is a dark ops U.S. government program where they are testing something, which explains why not a single one has been shot down or followed by a helicopter. Door number two, they are from another country, being operated by a government that's hostile to the United States, from either a boat, offshore somewhere, or on land here in the U.S. And they're testing our defenses, and they're seeing how we respond. Door number three, look, they're from another planet. These are aliens from another planet, little green men. These are not hobbyists. Every time I hear that, I laugh. These are not people who bought a drone on Amazon and are flying it around. This is not Joey down the street with a drone. And door number two should scare you the most. If these drones are being operated by some foreign power to test us for any number of reasons, we failed the test. We failed miserably. Joe Biden failed miserably. Have you ever seen the movie The War of the Worlds? Tom Cruise. This is kind of how it started. This is Joe Biden's America. Imagine if one of these drones were to hit a commercial plane. There's nothing funny about that. There's nothing funny about what's going on with this. It's a major national security concern, and for whatever reason, no one in our federal government seems to have any answers.
That's my man, Rob Finnerty, host of Finnerty, 8 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. Check it out tonight. He mentioned commercial airlines, right? Stewart International Airport, north of New York City, temporarily closed its runways Friday night after multiple reported drone sightings in the area. And speaking of the Biden administration, I mentioned that the president spoke to members of the Democratic National Committee at their holiday party last night. Check this out.
Bad news for y'all is I ain't going nowhere. We're going to stay engaged.
No, Joe, you are going somewhere. You're done. Stay engaged. Don't you have to be engaged to stay engaged? And the people that are clapping are the same people that ousted him, right? He also unknowingly went on to explain exactly why Democrats lost the election.
We are the essential country. That's not hyperbole. It's not about what we want to be. Ask yourself the question, if we don't lead the world, who does? Not a joke. Who does? Who leads if we don't?
The majority of Americans did ask themselves that question, and that's why they voted for Donald Trump and Republicans. Today, President Biden visits the Department of Labor to discuss his administration's work to better the U.S. workforce. Then tonight, as I mentioned, the President and First Lady host a Hanukkah reception at the White House with Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff, who is Jewish. And again, Hanukkah doesn't begin until Christmas, but they're celebrating tonight. And according to the White House calendar, Vice President Harris, Doug's wife, isn't going to be there. On Wall Street, stock futures were in the green ahead of the opening bell this morning. Investors are awaiting the outcome of this week's Federal Reserve meeting on Wednesday. The general consensus is for a 25 basis point cut. That is 1/4 percentage point. If that doesn't happen, based on some of last week's economic data and this week's economic data, retail sales numbers from November coming up, if the Fed decides not to cut interest rates, it could get ugly. If the Fed decides to go 50 basis points instead of 25, which isn't very likely, it could really get wild in a good way, I mean. So we have retail sales for November as well as earnings from FedEx and Nike coming out on Thursday. If you weren't paying attention over the weekend, Bitcoin topping $106,000. It has pulled back a bit this morning to around $103,000 and change. It'll be a busy week on Wall Street and on Capitol Hill, as I mentioned earlier. So be sure to keep up with all of the news, all the breaking developments, all day and night on Newsmax, N2, and Newsmax.com. Beginning each and every day with Wake Up America, now featuring Mark Lauder along with Charla McBride, American Agenda, Bianca De La Garza, Carl Higbee, Greta Van Susteren, Rob Schmidt tonight, Greg Kelly reports, Finnerty, and so much more. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily. Please continue to share it with your friends and family, and please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you listen to. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. If you are a football fan, we have 2 Monday Night Football games, Bears at Vikings, Falcons at the Raiders. And keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for